types of sports with shoot and tour. Football discussion on the internet.
Oh, welcome in, friendos. Welcome in. It is both types of sports with just shoot today, at least for the time being. A couple of special guests showing up in just a couple of few. Looking forward to it. Gigantic week in the world of professional playoff football. And it's strange. The off season is already creeping in while the postseason is going on. I'd like to start the show by apologizing for this. I had walking pneumonia since the first week in November, and then my unscrupulous counterpart Ant-Man got sick. And then as soon as he started to feel a little bit better, he said, I'm all well, man, I can hang out. He came over to my house and he did it to me again. This is probably the third winter in a row where he has claimed to be, including the last time I had COVID. He claimed to be better, came over and infected everybody around him. So if there's all of the accoutrement that goes along with that scenario that happens today on the program, I would like to apologize in advance. We have no goals today, but we do accept super chats. Thank you so much, Cannon Hotep. Good to see you. $9.99. Appreciate the support as always. Salute. Did I miss the pilgrimage to the buffet in PA? You are not plugged in to the show, my friend, if you have to answer that question. But in a quick response, yes, you most assuredly did. We covered that on the Chad Duke Show, and of course in many episodes of Solid Dudes, which is available if you access the back catalog here. There's a link at the top of the bio where you can become a member, or at least just turn on gifted memberships, and maybe somebody will bless you with one. But either way, I always appreciate your support and coming through, brother man. Thank you so much for the time and the $9.99 super chat. D-Man in the house, waiting on his Patriots to hire Titans legend Vrabes. Has that happened yet? I heard that the Patriots are terrible racists because they interviewed a couple of Byron Leftwich, a couple of gentlemen of color, and they're just doing that to. So if you go around the Rooney Rule, you're a racist, and if you comply with the Rooney Rule, you're a racist. Help me, help! I just want some help. I just want to stop being everybody calling everybody horrible, nasty things. Like, these words used to have a lot of weight, and they don't seem to have much anymore. So I don't know. If I'm the Patriots and I want to hire Mike Vrabel, I think I should be allowed to fire the coach I have and then hire Mike Vrabel. But that ain't the way it works, right? And look, I understand the essence of all of it. I'm all for opportunity. I'm all for everybody getting that opportunity, opening up the channels. Let's fucking go. But also, I believe in the meritocracy. I believe in capitalism. I believe if I own a company, I should be able to hire who the fuck I want. And that doesn't exist. I don't know if Sean Salisbury agrees with me. I'm sure we can touch on it at least.
I do.
Well, Sals, I think you and I have talked about this many times. Let's make it everybody's playing field, man. Let's get more minds involved. Let's get more personalities. Let's get more backgrounds. It's good for the sport. It's good for movies. It's good for television. But fuck me. I don't know what the Patriots are supposed to do. They had a coach that had all kinds of issues, not just issues on the field. They didn't win, but with personnel, with the media. And then the guy that maybe they wanted all along is finally available, and they want to go hire him, and they're getting shit for interviewing Byron Leftwich to comply with the Rooney Rule. I don't know what they're supposed to do here.
Okay, so yeah, I'm with you 100%. This thing, and listen, there is no question. You'd be an idiot not to just say, let's hire the best candidate, black, white, or I don't care. An opportunity, where the opportunity is, and when you're hiring coaches, to hire more coordinators that are African-American, to hire them, to give them an opportunity at growth, to get to that point. And then they have an opportunity to interview as head coaches. But you're so right. You're racist for firing the guy that you didn't want anymore because you don't think he's any good. I mean, basically that's what you're saying after a year, that it didn't work for you. You want to bring in a guy that after 1 year, so you fired him, so you only gave him 1 year, so it's a race issue. Then you interview an African-American, and it's a race issue. and you bring in a white guy and it's a race issue. I mean, I'm just saying this stuff of in talking to many African-American players and coaches, like when I hear that, that the man is going to be the first of this, the first of anything's important, and I get it.
Sure.
For instance, in the college football, James Franklin, Coach Freeman. These are great for, and I think Coach Marcus Freeman said this, that, we want to be standing on our merits as opposed to just, the black head coach. When Marcus Freeman's a hell of a coach, James Franklin, they're hellified coaches talking about the college level, and in talking to guys in the past. I remember I had a conversation with Tony Dungy years ago when he was our coordinator, coaching us on defense, and was waiting for opportunities to get a job. And we'd have conversation, and it was never Tony never wanted to be hired anything on his merits as a football coach and a leader. And it turned out great, and rightfully so. And I would hope that that's, regardless of the race, that's the case. But you're right. The perception that if you bring Byron Leftwich, I think it's a slap in the face to Byron Leftwich for us to assume that it was just to bring him in because he was for the Rooney Rule.
Sure.
Byron is a friggin' good football coach. So for us for people to say, they just brought him in for that. Maybe they had to fulfill the Rooney Rule, but Byron Leftwich knows how to coach. But just because they bring in a guy they want doesn't automatically make the organization a racist organization. We got to stop this, because when race really exists, and if it does, how would I know the deep, dark secrets of what goes on in a general manager and owner's hiring process? From my vantage point, I want the best, black, white, and there's a lot of great ones in both, creating opportunity for guys like Aaron Glenn and guys to go. We've seen Vance Joe. These guys are great football coaches. But we now have taken the race card and we put it on everything.
Right.
It goes both ways. It's not just white to black, black to white, on everything. And so it diminishes the fact that when something does happen that is a racist way to approach your hiring, that you look at it's kind of lost. It's the important part of it. It gets lost. So when everything is just, when we just thought the throwaway, it's tired. The throwaway race comment is tired in society. We know who is and who isn't. I don't believe you're hiring Mike Vrabel, just if you do, unless it happened when I was driving home, because he's white. I don't believe that. I would hope that we're past that now. I know I'm naive, and I don't mean to get on a soapbox. I know I'm naive to think that as a former athlete and have been in locker rooms, the least racist place I've ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Outside my home is a locker room.
Everybody says that. You're right.
It never even comes to fruition. I've got a black quarterback, Warren Moon, next to me, who's a dear friend. Or, my head coach, Denny Green, happens to be African-American. That never is talked about, maybe in their own places where they sit down, but it wasn't talked about in the locker room. It was great coach, great quarterback, great this. Oh, by the way, and yes, they're African-American. We can obviously see that. So I don't profess to know everybody's agenda in hiring, but you have a rule in place to get interviews. Now, I know some may not take it if they felt I got no chance at the job. I'm a Rooney Rule. I know a coach, I'll leave his name out, who was a very good coach in the NFL, who was in between jobs and wouldn't take an interview because he knew damn well it was a Rooney Rule. And I get it, because he passed that enough. I'm not going to be your Rooney Rule guy, but he'd been a veteran coach for a long time, and he'd take the interview, and I don't blame him. So there is that too. But for me, Chad, the tired part of every single time somebody hires or fires, that, this guy got this and this guy didn't. And I get the optics when you fire somebody after the first year, but he owns the team. They reserve the right to hire whoever they want if they don't think they're making strides on or off the field in a football team. But listen, it's fascinating. And I know I am naive to think that, well, does this really exist? I know it does. But I don't think it exists as rampant as everybody wants to make it on social media. That, yep, black, yep, it's his fault, or white, yep, it's his fault. Yep, it's racist organization. We're just this is why we're doing it. No, I don't believe that. And I think it diminishes where race really is. And in hiring, we've had some problems in the past of not giving opportunities to front office general managers, to athletic directors. I get it, 100%. But you can't use it for everything. Sometimes the guy just, white or black, we get rid of coaches. Remember Cam Cameron in Miami? Cam was a good coach, a good assistant. He wasn't any good as an NFL coach. They got rid of him.
Sure.
It happens. So, But yes, opportunities are far more there it feels like for white coaches and African Americans. So we got to, on a lower level, you've got to give them chances to be coordinators, to be put them in positions where their next job is a powerful job where they're in charge. That we do have to do. But every decision that's made, it's a tired subject when we talk about it. Every decision's made is based on race. I don't believe it, and I can't fathom in locker rooms that is the least racist place. So I know it exists with the old school group at times, but I don't believe it exists all the time. And just because you're white doesn't make it that you got the job because you're white. And just because you're African American, that's not the only reason you got a chance. I know a bunch of coaches, both black and white, that deserve opportunities, and that race has zero to do with it. As far as the race goes, you'll have to talk to somebody who does the hiring and get into their personal life, how they do it. Everything's not racist. It gets tired and maddening that we're diminishing good coaches, both black and white, because of the race card. And the Rooney Rule's in place. They want the Rooney Rule. It's there. So you got to fulfill it. But you just can't turn around and then blame them for, well, you can't hire 4 head coaches. You can only hire 1. So, and I do believe it goes both ways. There's been African-American general managers that have hired white coaches. There's been white general managers that have hired African-American coaches, just all the time. The least racist place is in the sporting place. It's all the perception of it that makes it worse. But opportunity is important, but everything's not racist, and it gets tiring to hear it all the time. Both ways. It just does.
Different issue, but it's kind of, I would assume, on the same tree. When you're a head coach, Sal's, it's all the slings, it's all the arrows, and I get it. It's all the press conference and the glory, and Dan Campbell's doing Applebee's commercials. Ben Johnson is not. But Ben Johnson and Cliff Kingsbury specifically, and Cliff's a little different because he's had a shot at it. But you see what Jaden Daniels has done. You see where the Washington Commanders are, and they haven't been there in a very long time. So he's getting interest. Bears are sniffing around. Ben Johnson's a little bit more obvious because he's never done it. So he's the unknown. And also you see what they're doing in Detroit with this offense. Are we going to get to a point, though, where we have these mad chefs, these mad cooks, that are in the kitchen, and it's actually a better gig to just be the offensive coordinator, because you don't have to take all the slings and arrows that the coaches do. You could do what you love. You can cook. You can develop quarterbacks. We all know these guys' names now. And then, God forbid, you get out from behind Jaden Daniels, who I think there's a lot of people in Washington that are cashing a lot of checks and earning a lot of goodwill simply because that guy's better than a lot of that we've seen before, and the rising tide is raising all ships. But do you think that what Ben Johnson did last year, he could do again, or some of these guys could do again, and realize, why do I want to go put myself through what I did? I mean, Cliff Kingsbury left the fucking country after what happened to him in Arizona. He's probably a better coordinator than he is coach. You just mentioned guys that are like that. Do you think we'll get to a point where now we're saying college gigs might be better than pro gigs? Will there be coordinator gigs that are better than head coaching jobs?
Sure. And well, it already exists in college. Who leaves UCLA to go coordinate at Ohio State? UCLA is not exactly a small program. Now, it may not be a national title powerhouse every year. Chip Kelly left the head coaching job to go be a coordinator at Ohio State. Now, I would think that Chip wants another head coaching gig, and Ohio State's a really good way with that talent to get you there. Well, the defensive coordinator in Green Bay left the head coaching job at Boston College to go be the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. So it does again. How about all those years that Brett Venables wouldn't leave Clemson, making a couple $1 million a year as a defensive coordinator, and then the Oklahoma job, he'd interview all the time. The job finally came up. I do. There may become a time, like you're seeing coaches get out because of NIL and collective and transfer portal. You may also see where coaches are like, and there is a difference. I want people to understand this. And why I've always harped on a Hall of Fame, that we should have assistant coaches in the Hall of Fame. In truth, you work your whole life to be a head coach if you're a coach. And when you get there, what they miss most is the interaction with their position guys. So you become a CEO. And in truth, not that head coaches don't, like Andy Reid who's involved and Sean Payton, but a lot of them, and Ben Johnson will go and I imagine call his own plays the first year. I get it. But a lot of them are to the point where, if I'm hiring, put me in a GM role or an athletic director role, I want a great leader who knows how to get buy-in. I don't give a fuzzy rat's ass about your X's and O's anymore. You already proved to me the X's and O's that got you the head coaching job. I need you to be a guy who can maximize the building, give me great leadership, and take a 5 and make him a 7 with his belief in you. You're part psychologist, part head coach, part media coach, all those things. And then you got to coach your coaches. Now, what I do need, and that's why assistant coaches do, quite frankly, I hate to say this in most cases, they do most of the work. Okay, the offensive line coach, the coordinator. So, yes, all that responsibility of the game, and then the head coach gets the credit because I had them ready to play motivation. A lot of these coaches aren't calling offense or defense. They're just they put themselves in position to hire people they trust. Hence why the hell isn't Tom Moore going to be in the Hall of Fame? He coached Terry Bradshaw, and he's still coaching. He's coached Brady, Manning. He coached us in Minnesota. I mean, the dude's still doing. Why isn't there? Why doesn't? I mean, he's directly responsible for a lot of Manning's success, just like Dungy or anybody else that Jim Caldwell is. So we should put him in there. The emphasis on being an assistant. And now that they're paying him more, heck, we're getting to a point where an assistant's going to be making $4.5 million a year at some point. Yep. So you think, I don't want the media headache. I don't want to shake hands and kiss babies. I'm great at calling plays. I love this. It's ego, and it's everybody wants to be the boss. But I think so. I think you'll get to a point, and then along in a career like a Tom Moore, when the head coaching stuff is bypassed, you get to a point where it's like Dick LeBeau, Tom Moore says, I'm just going to be the best assistant on the planet or an offensive line coach and go do my thing. But I do. All the headache and all the bullshit. You have 3 great years and 1 bad year, and they want to fire you.
Yeah.
And then you say, I get to go back to being a coordinator again. And most coaches love that part of it. So I know that there is a difference. I know great head coaches that are great leaders that may not X's and O's. They're not involved heavily in them anymore, other than watching what the game plan's being put in. And I do know great position coaches that don't know the rhythm of calling plays. That they're a position coach that they can't. It's a 3-tiered thing. So, yes, if you want the power of an offense, try, frankly, be the coordinator that's in cahoots with the head coach, but he's just believed in you. So, will Ben Johnson, if he gets Goff and 2 great running backs and Amon-Ra St. Brown and that, make no mistake about it, while coaching's important and always will be. Great coaches with shitty players get fired. Great players with average coaches get pay raises and still win games. Great coaches and great players together put rings on their finger. It's never X's and O's. I can draw up a game plan for you right now to attack the Houston Texans right now this week. If my Jimmies and Joes can't, or Houston against the Chargers, if the Jimmies and Joes can't execute, my X's and O's don't mean shit. But I can have great X's and O's, and if I don't have good players, they don't mean squat anyway. So it is the Jimmies and Joes. And then if you have both, well, you're in championship like Baltimore, like Kansas City. So I do think, and I know it's a long answer on an important question, but I do think it'll come to fruition, especially somebody who may have been down that path before and said, you know what, I'm tired of it. I just want to call plays. I'm great at it. I'm making $3 million a year. You could deal with a headache. I can still go to the beach in the off season in the NFL. It'll happen. But right now, until, the money is getting, and college head coaches and NFL head coaches are damn near making the same money now. But it's the power ego thing that you're in charge. But the great power ego coaches empower their assistants to do their job, and they still stay out of the X's and O's of it.
What do you make of the Texans? I believe they're the only home dogs this weekend in the super wild card weekend. I'm not sure if we're calling it that, though. The Chargers come into town last time I saw, I think, 2.5 points they're giving the Texans. I saw the quarterback. I saw C.J. Stroud talking about it and how he uses that, but it's very difficult to look at. I mean, the one comparison I've been seeing all week long, Sal's, is Bryce Allen and what his numbers ended up being this season compared to what Stroud's are, what Jaden Daniels is doing. People are saying that's greater than what C.J. Stroud even did last year. I don't know that it's not binary, but there clearly is a sense, and you and I have talked about it all season. I picked Houston at the beginning of the year. I said if there's one team that I trust to give the Chiefs a run for their money, it ain't the Bills, it ain't Pittsburgh, it's not even Baltimore. It's Houston. I was wrong about that. If they flare out and go one and done, especially if it's at home in Harbaugh's first year, what are the optics on that, and how do you digest a disappointing season that still ended up with you winning the division and hosting a playoff game?
Yeah, that's a great point. When it comes to being the underdog at home in a playoff game, that's good locker room fodder and talk. Until some of you open up in the first kickoff, you go down there and you get punched right in the face. Nobody cares if you're an underdog or a favorite. You still got to play it. But people it's like, why would I give a shit if Rex Ryan's picking against us when we're not playing against him and he's not with the Chargers? You know how Rex said it's a bye week. Now you can use whatever motivation you need to gather, whatever your Red Bull is or 5-hour energy on game day, have at it. but you still got 60 minutes of when they punch you. I'm not thinking, man, we're the underdog, and boy, Khalil Mack just knocked me in the teeth. Boy, I'm the underdog, so I'm going to pay him back. You're going to pay his ass back because you want to play football and win. They should be the underdog because they are the worst team. And if you have if you have my druthers, college and NFL, and they're going to change it in college. Just because you win a division, quite frankly, Minnesota shouldn't be going to LA and to play the Rams. I know it's division, but different. The 4 best teams with the 4 best records should be playing at home. The Vikings should be at home, and the Houston Texans should be going to LA to play the Chargers. That's just the way it should. But the way it's set up, you can go 7-9 in your division or 7-10 now if you win the division, and somebody's still coming to you to play. That's 1. 2 is I am with you. At the beginning of the year, after a 3-win season 2 years ago, then winning 10 games, the expectations went through the roof. And I just think the Texans haven't handled discipline-wise success very well. We always talk about failure. They haven't handled success very well, whether it's off-season, whether it's the fact that Bobby Slowick has got a little bit more protect us, not playing not to lose as opposed to win. Last year, they were aggressive for 17 straight games, won 10 of them. The schedule's much more brutal on them. So the pass that didn't get deflected last year actually gets deflected because that corner's a little better on that roster. And then there's the, not sophomore slump, but hey, the easy throws that he didn't miss last year, Stroud has missed some of those. Not that he's a hack and that look at Bryce Young. We had him buried and he was done, right? People were ready to quit on him. He's starting to actually play some pretty good football, and a couple more years of building it with a good coach. Bryce Young may end up being a player. So not everybody's Jaden Daniels and Stroud as rookies. And Jaden will go through times that 2 or 3 games like, damn, the frustration where people say, what, we got to bench him? Hell, I heard somebody in Minnesota say they wanted to bench Darnold after last week's game against Detroit. Get the fuck out of here. Just stop it, okay? just friggin' stop it, okay? But with that, the Texans deserve to be underdogs, but you still got to go play it. It doesn't matter. They were underdogs, I think, against Cleveland last year, ended up winning. So you got to line up and go do it. And I know that sounds so cliche and you got to execute, but don't turn it over and play physical. And normally, if my quarterback's better than yours in the game, you end up winning as long as the other quarterback isn't playing the same amount. Both defenses don't suck. So the narrative will be, you'd be surprised for a team that's playing at home with a Charger team coming to town, how the tread light, the noise is very, very soft in Houston right now. Why? Is because I think they're waiting to see who's showing up. I don't want to lose that emotion a fan feels, and I get it. I'm not going to let it rip because when I do, then – and they'll all be there, but it's treading lightly to see which Texans team's showing up. Is it the inconsistent offense, defense flying around, make a play here and there, and then go 3 series where you're like, what are you doing, and get beat by 3 points? Or is it the damn 9 of 30 Josh Allen defense and then Stroud making throws off bounds? Damn, that's as good a thrower we got in the league. Who is it? And I think that's where the fan base is. And I like the Chargers in the game until the Texans prove to me they can play 60 minutes of physical football on both sides. And Joe Mixon must be a big reason why. Yeah. That means get him involved in the pass game, not just the run game. I'm concerned about their offensive line and what the Chargers are going to do. They play really good defense. They don't give up big home run plays. They got that Baltimore feel to them because, Mentors from there and Jesse Mentor, the whole thing. You're going to have to physically manhandle the Chargers or you're in for a bunch of body blows, and their quarterback's capable of making big plays. Give me the Chargers in a 1-score game.
I'm so glad you brought up Darnold, and I'm so glad we feel the same way. He threw for almost 4,500 yards, 35 touchdowns. That's a 14-win team. And correct me if I'm wrong, Sal's, Patrick Mahomes has the same stat line as Aaron Rodgers does this year. Jared Goff went out and had a 5-turnover game. When does Sam Darnold play well enough so that when he does have a game where he's off, there aren't thousands of people saying, oh, he's just Sam Darnold. We knew that he sucked a bag of them. Like, no, he fucking doesn't. He had an off day against the best team in the NFC. Now, it's a big moment, and he missed some throws, and I understand his resume is his resume. But when does it happen? We went from they got to trade away J.J. McCarthy, they've got to franchise him, they got to figure out a way to make it work, to maybe we should bench him like we're going to bench Russell Wilson for Justin Fields going into the postseason with these histrionics we see on social media. Does Darnold have to go out and does he have to make it to the Super Bowl? When does he get that credibility with people that watch football?
Well, he'd have to win the whole thing this year because the stigma follows him around. Jets, Carolina, backup, bust, journeyman. Yet he comes in here and finally found a good coach, a bunch of good players, shifted his paradigms. And now if the Vikings don't franchise him, regardless of McCarthy or not, they're idiots. We want our quarterbacks, our young quarterback. We'd love to have them sit back and watch. I hear that all the time. Listen, if he's better than the veteran, you play his ass.
Yeah.
And then when we're going to say, okay, the veteran's going to play and the young guy's going to sit and watch, what a luxury to have. We're pissed that the young guy's not playing. 4,500 yards. Listen, I understand the stigma that came into the season for Darnold, a 1-year, $10 million contract. It's a show-me year. Well, he showed you. And now they're going to ask him more than likely to show him again so he gets the $55 million 7-year, 6-year, 5-year deal as opposed to the 1-year franchise of whatever it is in the 40s, low 40s, whatever that is. But the stigma, it's way too easy and low-hanging fruit. And quite frankly, and the fans are smart, but there is always a group that are dumber than a motherfucker, okay, that actually think from their living room, well, listen, O'Connell needs to do this, and, well, why's Darnold? And then you ask them, I have this on my show once in a while, a guy will call in and say, you know what, man, I know they need to get rid of Bobby Slowick because I know the guy that the quarterback coach, and he knows the team better. I've heard this. I heard it this week. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, do me a favor. Then tell me exactly what it is that you know about the backup that makes him more qualified than the coordinator, the quarterback coach. Well, I don't know, Sean. He went to my high school. Heard that. And
wow.
and he's an A&M. Now I start to get it. It has nothing to do with what you know about it. It has, and I'm not mean. I said, well, teach me. It also happened. I can remember when Davis Mills came out of college,
sure,
3rd round pick. I had a caller call in and say, Davis Mills sucks, can't play. This is his rookie year. Why did you draft him? I know he can't play. I've seen him. I said, okay. How many times you watch him play when he's at Stanford? He goes, well, I saw some highlights and clips. I said, how many games did you watch him play at Stanford? This was like 2 weeks after the draft. He said, I never saw him play at Stanford. I said, this conversation's over. So that you'll get a couple. Now, most of them are right, and they get it, and they understand it's a hard game. But Darnold is going to carry that stigma for a minute because they're going to say, anytime what happens against Detroit, who, by the way, is 15-2 and has home field advantage in the playoffs, has a bad game. Yeah, there's New York Jets, Sam Darnold. Yet all year long, he's been not part of the reason. He's been a huge reason why they are in this position now. So, and I think Sam's personality is trying to like, whatever. What are you going to say to Darnold that hasn't been said to him negatively since he came into the league and struggled? He's hit rock bottom as far as quarterbacks go, and now he's living the life. The first key is not to give a shit about what you or me thinks, and I think he's done a good job of that. The Vikings know what they have, but yeah, bench Darnold after a game with Detroit. Great. Imagine if Detroit benched, as you said, 5 picks against the Texans and they still won. Yeah, Jared Goff, bad game. Remember when he screwed up in the Super Bowl that they lost when he was with the Rams? That's why he got traded. Well, and now he's an MVP candidate. 98% of fans I love and listen. There's that 2% on social media. You say, you are the dumbest motherfucker on the planet. And then you say, well, walk me through cover. Well, yeah, they're playing cover 2, Sean. Okay. Well, I'll say, I don't know what cover 2 is. So explain to our listeners what you mean by that. Well, that's what I thought. Goodbye. So it just, if you're going to tell me, no problem, teach me. I'm here because I don't know shit, but I'd sure like to. But I do know this. If you bench Sam Darnold, then you might as well just blow up the organization. Let's move on. Okay. He's giving you the best chance to win this year. Next year, we'll deal with next year. So it's a fragile position. It's a fragile game. And some upset's going to take place this weekend, I would imagine. There's a few places I don't think it's going to happen, but bad quarterback play and 2 turnovers in inclement weather, and the underdog can go on the road and win.
I know you got a heart out here at the bottom of the hour, and I appreciate your time as always, Sal. I wanted to ask you this. It has nothing to do with the playoffs, but I read a stat today that Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times this season, which is the 3rd most in NFL history, and it's David Carr and Randall Cunningham, who had a pretty good career. The only other quarterbacks that have been sacked that much, he lost 466 yards on sacks. And if you look at that, and if you watched him, I would say at least 40%, I'm very rough math here, we're on him. I mean, there was a lot of him, what they said about him coming out of college. He holding on to the ball, waiting to make the home run. You coach quarterbacks, you were a quarterback. let's say there is no new genius head coach coming in. There are no 5 new beefy linemen coming in. There's no great scheme. What do you tell a quarterback taking a beating like that? Because following the Titans all year, I watched Will Levis do the same thing. There's guys that just seem to have a proclivity to get blown up and get sacked and dragged down. What are 1 or 2 things from a quarterback's perspective you could tell a guy taking that type of beating that he can do personally to protect himself better?
Right. And that's a great point, Chad. And, have you ever noticed that a lot of times the league leader in sacks, taking sacks, is a guy who's mobile?
Yes.
You ever notice that? Why? Because when in doubt, first guy's not open. What for me, I couldn't scramble. So I'm hanging in the pocket. I'll take a shot to the jaw because feet weren't my, scrambling wasn't my strength as far as beating you with my feet. So I had to stay in and get through my progressions. Young player that's got great feet. What has Caleb Williams always been able to do? Bail himself out with phenomenal athleticism, throwing off schedule. So when the first guy's not open, as a young player, and sometimes even as a veteran, as a young player, what's the first thing you do? Bail and believe in yourself, right? You trust you because you've done it a million times.
Sure.
And that leads to sacks. It just leads to sacks. And you run into trouble. And yes, a lot of them are on him, whether it's not seeing a 4-week blitz, not understanding, I'm going to pump fake, make the guy miss and go. There's no question. And when I hear people always blame stuff on an offensive line anywhere, then I go back and watch and say, well, wait a minute. He called the line to the right. He pointed at the slot guy, and the slot guy's the guy. And then he doesn't look at the slot guy, and the slot guy's the one who hit him in the back. So what are we talking about here? And, as an SC guy, I think Caleb Williams is an enormous talent. I said this on my show earlier in the week. I said, I wish I had 6 weeks to train it, 6 months. Give me him in the offseason. Obviously, you want a better coach, and you want somebody that gets it and understands. I don't want to coach his skill set out of him. What I would say as far as protecting yourself, well, those hits in the pocket, sometimes you can't protect. Be a wise and judicious runner on the edge. You don't need to take on 3 linebackers at 2nd and 5 in the middle of the second quarter when you're up 2 touchdowns. Save that for when it's 3rd and 1 and you need a 4th down run. But we would spend more time mentally at getting through progressions and trusting that his arm from the pocket, better there. But I would spend a lot of time working on the mechanics of understanding what you're seeing to be able to limit your sacks because you're running into them. I want him to trust the progression. And you see it. Jaden Daniels is ahead of it. He's to his 2nd and 3rd guy. What it is that Caleb Williams trusts his legs more than he does the 2nd or 3rd read right now. And I understand you're getting beat up. So, there's a lot of layers to it, but there's nothing I can tell him to toughen him up when it takes that. And body language is going to have to improve for him, but he's just going to have to get in. The mental side takes care of more physical. When you're good physically, but mentally, and I'm not saying dumb, I'm talking about as a rookie and growing into it and understanding what defense. I would tell him spend 30 minutes a day with the defensive coordinator and ask them how they defend you. I would ask him to do that, not just the offense side. Find defensive people and say, how would you defend me? And then you start to see, where's the conflict? Where's my weakness? I know my strength. Okay. They think I need to hang in the pocket a little longer. Great. So how do I get that? Knowing mentally what to expect from certain coverages and fronts that go together. And what it is that it's usually not the physical that causes people to make bad decisions. It's the indecisiveness and the clutter in your mind of the mental part that leads to poor throws and decisions on the physical side. So we would get into the book. I would say, let's work on every weakness. You're not scrambling one time this off season in our training. Everything we do is from this, and we're going to simulate as much as we can the reads. And once he gets to that point, he'll be fine. And he has to quit being a hero. The best quarterbacks in the world make the ordinary play look ordinary. At times, young guys or guys that move around make the ordinary play, scramble around for 3 minutes and hit the guy in the flat that was actually open on the flat when you put your foot in the ground on your 3-step drop originally. So for them, it's make the ordinary play. Breeze, Brady, Manning, Moon, the great Mahomes. He doesn't miss a bubble screen. He doesn't miss a flat route to Pacheco out of the backfield. The simple play is far greater a measuring stick of length, sustained, great play than the off schedule, yank it out of your ass, throw it behind your back, and a guy makes a spectacular catch. They're fine and dandy. You can't live there. You live with the ordinary play. And if you can't make the ordinary play, you can't sustain great play. Guys like me didn't make the ordinary play enough. Played 10 years, but that's why you're not a star in the league. My arm, I could throw it as far as anybody. I could throw it as hard as anybody. I was as smart as anybody. But for whatever reason, the ordinary play, the guy behind him catches it for 5 yards instead of in front, runs for 10. And it's the same thing now. Caleb Williams makes the ordinary play look extraordinary, meaning makes it too tough. I see that a lot in young players. Yeah, 6 months with him and mechanics would change. I'm not going to coach it out of him, the good plays, but I am going to coach into him. I want him to play like he has horrible feet. I want him to play like he has an average arm. That's what I tell a guy I have in high school. He's a phenomenal talent. I want you to play like you got a pop gun arm and you run 6 flat 40. So you know what they do? Ooh, then I better understand the mental side. I better get through my progressions. I better know who to get and how to get him and where to throw it. And I better understand offensive line, who's the unblocked guy. And then the physical will take care of itself. And then with that physical skill, the rest comes into play. I'll take that guy any day of the week over the guy who's physically gifted, who can throw it through a car wash without getting it wet, but can't hit the car wash. And Will Levis is going through some of that right now.
He certainly is. I knew as soon as I saw that stat, you'd have a tremendous answer, and you did. Sean Salisbury Show, Sports Talk 790 and the iHeartRadio app. You can find it there, and at Sean Unfiltered on X, a must follow. Great to have you back on the show, Sals. Thank you for the bonus time, by the way. It's greatly appreciated.
My pleasure, brother. It's great to be on with you. I love you, man.
There is. Love you, too. And in that way, my friend, thank you so much. The great Sean Salisbury murdering it for us on both types of sports. Hit the like button, you cowards. Let's clean up some of these super chats. We do accept super chats. We've only received 4. If I don't get 10 super chats before I get out of here, it's going to be your ass. That's it. That's all I'll say. Danny Diaz, $1.99. Thank you so much. Got to hammer the Notre Dame giving a 1.5 tonight, by the way. I'll leave that up to you, Danny Diaz. Me betting college football is like me trying to unclasp a Lunchable with one hand. I can't do it. I need several devices, maybe the jaws of life. Jeffrey Schools, $4.99. Thank you so much. Preach, Sal. Sal has no idea the CDS impact of the Jimmys and Joes running things. No shit. I almost said the same thing. Imagine if the Jimmys and Joes were running the show on the Chad Duke Show. We'd be in bedlam, in anarchy. We'd be completely discombobulated. Jeffrey Schools, thank you so much for not being an iconoclast today and helping me pull the rope in the right direction. You're a good man. I should, while I've got a moment, we do have another guest coming up. Conor Orr from SI is scheduled to join us in just a couple of few. I haven't caught up with him in a minute. Was always a great guest on the Chad Dukes versus the World radio program, for those of you that might have dabbled. But Sean Salisbury, of course, was presented by Dream Stay Getaways when booking your Florida theme park vacation this winter. And my God, do I need it right now. Avoid the fees, book the houses. Look at these fucking houses. If you're listening on the audio podcast, on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you find both types of sports, go to their website. Check it out for yourself. dreamstaygetaways.us. They have a Instagram as well if you want to see all the beautiful homes. They're on resorts. They're right next to the parks, and you can avoid all the Vrbo fees. You can avoid all the Airbnb fees. You can avoid it all if you book through the website. dreamstaygetaways.us. All of our guests are courtesy of them. Book them if you're going to Universal, if you're going to Disney, if you're going to whenever. Apologize if the internet is doing screwy things in my studio. I just heard a crew go out onto the roof, and they are chiseling ice. That's where we're at. That's where life is at right now. 6 straight days of this nonsense. Not a kid's been to school. There's salt everywhere. Gray death ice on the side of every road. Don't ask. But things are heating up. They're about to get more classy around here. The great Conor Orr has decided to slum it with us today, and I'm in his debt for taking some time out. Hello, Conor. Good to see you, brother.
You too. How are you?
Fantastic. Senior writer, Sports Illustrated, at Conor Orr on X. You can go ahead and give him a follow. There's so much I need to talk with you about, but you wrote a very provocative piece about the Titans hiring another general manager here eventually. And this is a team that a couple years ago, 13 wins, they were number 1 seed. Things were looking up. They had Derrick Henry. They had A.J. Brown. They had Mike Vrabel. And everything has gone screwy since then. Just a quick thumbnail. I'm not going to ask you to surmise your entire piece, but how do we get from there to where we are in 2024?
Well, I think it's one of those things where, ownership gets involved. And, I think we've seen this in other places too, where the coach kind of becomes the voice of the franchise. And I think everybody kind of wants a piece of the pie and everything starts to pull apart. And so I think Rand Carthon, who was let go, was kind of brought in to be that sort of opposite force of Mike Vrabel, so that the entire Titans didn't become the whole Vrabel thing. But what happens when you do that is I think you kind of kneecap things a little bit. You probably undermine a little bit of your processes. And then all of a sudden, Vrabel's out. And then you're like, okay, well, we're going to do this thing where we pair the cool, trendy front office with the offensive play caller. But by then, like, your whole identity's kind of been sucked out. You don't really know what you are. And then the telltale trap is you spend hundreds of millions of dollars in free agency on guys that nobody else wants. And then, yeah, of course you end up at 3-13. And I think that's kind of where the Titans found themselves.
Why was this administration allowed to go out and spend like a drunken sailor on free agents when that has not been the Titans' MO leading up into that point? Why that much leeway being given and then such a quick leash afterwards?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I think you have to look at it, at least the way it was explained to me, you have to understand this as this whole thing is taking place as a backdrop to the fact that the Titans are opening a new stadium in 2027. And there's a webcam on the site. You can see how close it is. It's going to be in downtown Nashville. By the time that stadium opens, they're going to have a team that's good enough to sell tickets for. And, I don't know why they spent now. I don't know why they spent, especially last year. The free agency class wasn't very good. I had a lot of people tell me they were surprised if Calvin Ridley was going to get upwards of what he got. Tony Pollard, all that stuff. L'Jarius Sneed ended up being one of the worst cornerbacks in the NFL this year. And so I don't know if it was to try to give Brian Callahan a boost, to make the team look like they, weren't missing Mike Vrabel or whatever it was. And you'll see that from teams from time to time that'll spend out of behavior to do stuff like that. But it ends up costing you so much more. I mean, the NFC East well. The Giants did this a couple of years ago, and they're still recovering from that. It takes time to get yourself out of a hole like that.
Certainly does. Hey, buddy, do you have a pair of like phone headphones or anything you can plug into your laptop? Because I think what we're getting is some echoes that are coming out of the speaker because I'm bloviating. I'll give you a second to grab that and we'll get you situated. Yeah, that happens sometimes if I saw people commenting on it in the chat, if the voice is coming out of the speaker instead of out of the headphones, then you can get a little bit of an echo. But yeah, I think that the question that we're talking about here is whether or not the franchise lines up. Ownership, general manager, team president, coach, they're all on the same page. And that's kind of why I give the Jets credit, because I know that sounds nutty, but the Jets have decided it wasn't working. Everybody goes. This thing that Jacksonville's trying to do where Trent Baalke's still there, we're firing the coach. Okay, that at least makes somewhat some sense because it's general manager and coach. Keeping the coach and firing the general manager, we'll bring Conor back in here. That's the part that I wanted to ask him about. And that's what, to me, Conor, seems so strange is that I thought one of the things you wanted, first of all, Titans' job should be alluring. You have the first overall pick. I'm sure that's one of the reasons, the impetus to do this. Mm-hmm. But firing, I don't want to defend the Jacksonville Jaguars for keeping Trent Baalke, but at least it's the general manager and he's choosing the coach. What do you say to, and you have a team president that's part of it. So is this just a glorified scout that is coming in and that's why they're not concerned about they don't get to pick their own guy?
Yeah, I mean, and you go through any one of these jobs, any one of these processes. I mean, I know that there are, since the beginning of this, there are coaching agents, people in the industry who are like, yeah, I tell my guys, don't go in unless you can go in with somebody else, a GM at the same time, or else you're hosed. And I don't know how we got to the point where we stopped looking at this as a sample size. The 49ers put John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan in together. They put them on the same timeline, contractual timeline. They gave them, very set and firm responsibilities, and every team that seems to do this, that has some sort of a vision, ends up being, successful and in the playoffs. And every team that does the mismatch and the mispairing and, well, I hope I get into this place and this guy who's survived all these other firings doesn't do the same thing to me, it doesn't work. It's an awkward situation. It puts you in a bad spot with ownership off the top. And so I don't know. I mean, it drives me nuts that, I cover the coaching industry so tightly, and because there's so much to cover, because every year we have 7, 8, 9 openings. It's crazy.
So I pulled the quote from your piece, and everybody should check it out. SI.com. It's on Conor's X account as well. You can find it there. When the Titans fired John Robinson, who's now getting interviews, of course, Amy Adams Strunk said, "I believe there is more to be done and higher aspirations to be met." That would choose to be a very ironic statement. And now they're talking about continuity. The one thing that San Francisco did, if I recall, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but they gave both of those guys long-ass, opulent contracts, right? Because of how far they had fallen and the turnover and the churn. I hear people talking about the churn and how, like, you can't have that. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the Giants did what they did this offseason. So if that's what it takes when you're a bum franchise, would the Titans not been better served taking that into consideration and trying to how are you going to have a unified front when the coach you fired didn't like the GM you brought in, you fire the coach, keep the GM, and then fire the GM a year later? Like, that is nutty to me.
It is. I mean, you mentioned the Jets before, and they're doing it, I think, or at least trying to do it the right way this time, and we'll see what ends up happening there. But for years, I mean, that was the team that I started covering in the NFL, and it was always one or the other. Coach gone, then GM stays. GM stays, then coach goes. Coach goes, and GM stays. And what that does is it just rips your roster apart because you're constantly in search of this mysterious identity that only one person really ever kind of has the eye for. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm always in favor of, as a franchise, kind of admitting that you're wrong, knowing your mistakes. I mean, even, when Art Smith got the Falcons job, that was an abnormally long contract. When D'Amico Ryans got the Texans job, it was a long contract because it's like, hey, it's going to take a little bit of time to fix and to figure that out. And, we're illustrating that within the length of the contract. But I'm dying to see what Tennessee does. Now, if you let Brian Callahan have a voice in this, then is it almost like pairing your coach and your GM? Possibly. But again, I mean, what happens if he wins 3 or 4 games again next year? Because this roster really isn't going to be that much more ready to compete after one offseason.
Conor Orr, senior writer, SI.com, joins me on both types of sports. It's at Conor Orr on X. Give him a follow, and you can read the piece that we're discussing on there. The division is such garbage. I look at the AFC South, and that's why if you're the Texans, you got to win a playoff game. There's no solace in winning that division. And I look at Indianapolis and what they're going through, and they're going to hold course with the whole fragging from McAfee, and the players are sniping, and he's exposing that franchise in a way you don't see. That he's maybe the biggest figure right now in popular culture and sports, and he is filleting his former franchise. I've never seen anything like it. And then Jacksonville's Jacksonville. I mean, they're a doormat. It's sad. I think that being a part of the worst division also compounds it and it makes it worse. What I would ask you, Conor, is everyone is kind of just universal. And if they take Cam Ward, they haven't gotten the quarterback right. No disrespect to Marcus Mariota, but since Steve McNair, we all know how it's going to go. Like, how would you begin to dig out if someone came to you with this mess and said, here, fix this for us? What would be the first couple of steps you would take?
It's hard too, because this is not a draft that provides a lot of immediate solutions. And at least the feedback we're getting right now is like, I don't know if Cam Ward's going to be ready to start, an NFL season. And the other part of that is, I don't know if any team is going to want to trade up for the privilege of having Cam Ward on their team. Right. And so it's like, you can't get out of it by doubling down and trading out and getting draft capital. You can't really get out of it by playing the kid and starting him from day one. And so it's one of those situations where I suppose if I was the Titans GM, you would do one of the things that Atlanta did, where you would take the quarterback, but you would also cover yourself on the backside with some sort of a veteran, whether it's Kirk Cousins or, someone that you think could maybe get some meaningful starts for you early in the season, and allow that kid to get some time and some, his feet underneath him. And at least then maybe you steal a couple games that you're not supposed to early on. And Brian Callahan's made his bones working with, yes, it was Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow came out of college as one of the most pro-ready quarterbacks that we've ever seen in a generation. He was so smart. He stayed extra time at LSU. He was essentially a full-time quarterback by the time he came out of school. And I know a lot of these guys are now in the NIL era, But, Callahan's going to need some guys to work with. I mean, he's going to need some people who can win him games like right away. And so, whether that's throwing yourself in the Cousins sweepstakes, whether that's getting after, Geno Smith of the Seahawks, let him go. I mean, you've got to be playing in that ball field right now.
I was hoping you'd say it. What about Florio throwing out Aaron Rodgers? If he wants to, he's got a house in Nashville.
He does.
Calvin Ridley, Tony Pollard. These are 1,000-yard position pieces. Chigakonkwa. They got Tajay Spears. I mean, they're not. The cabinet isn't bare for weapons. The offensive line is tough, and he just took 1 million sacks. But is that completely off the table and sell some tickets? I don't know. I look at his stats. They're the same as Patrick Mahomes' stats this year. He just hit 500 touchdowns. Is that outlandish?
Not for multiple reasons, no, because, everyone says, oh, well, Aaron got his 500th touchdown. He's done. Do you think he's going to want to retire 5 touchdowns behind Brett Favre all time? No chance. I think he plays again next year, and he should. I mean, 28 touchdowns and 11 interceptions? He had a good season by most measures. And all right, if you're the Titans, you've already done the Calvin Ridley thing. You've already done the Pollard thing. You already got to pay him now. What is it going to cost to get Devontae Adams down there? Who cares? Like, just, bring the gang back together. Like, it can't be worse.
I love it.
Than it is. And if you look at, to Callahan's credit, if Will Levis was a replacement level NFL quarterback without 8 of the most noteworthy turnovers that we've seen this season in terms of like meme-worthy turnovers, the Titans would be like a 7-win team, and it wouldn't seem that catastrophic right now.
Can you talk a little bit? I haven't gotten anybody on here that Levis, whatever. I'm sure he's a nice man. The Mayo commercials were so regrettable at the beginning of the season. Conor, you've been around this, covering a bunch of teams with a bunch of goofy players. I have never seen anyone spurg out the way when he's horizontal and parallel with the ground, throwing the football back with the fumbles, him getting crushed in Green Bay and rolled up. I've never seen anyone. And I was, I did whatever it was, 15 years, Griffin's there. Every time Griffin got hit, he looked like one of those crash test dummies where their arms and legs would blow off, but it wasn't the same way. I've never seen, and this sounds disrespectful to a professional athlete, but a goofball, the way that Levis was a goofball. How do you kind of put it into context, the way that he played the game?
Levis is a player that, at least so far, I've been the most wrong about. I thought in the summer before that draft, I was talking to people like scouts, and they were like, this guy's Matt Ryan 2.0. Like, you got to see this kid play. And I was like, wow, like they might take him. He might go over Bryce Young. And then, I thought the Colts were going to take him at number 4 that year. Like, I was really, invested in this guy. And, I think that I've never seen a player make a coach audibly say, I think it was Brian Callahan, he didn't have the play sheet in front of his face. What the F are you doing? He actually said it on in the middle of the game. And then, he got asked about it afterwards, and he's like, yeah, well, I guess you guys all know, kind of what I was thinking in that moment. But I've never seen a player cause a coach to quite react that way. Russell Wilson probably close with Art Smith this year when he was just like, what, but he's an interesting guy. And I do think there's probably a fix to it. If you got him a little bit more mobile, if you tied him into the run game a little bit more, and then you limited some of his capacity to do Levis stuff, but he's a talented kid. It's just, it hasn't worked out.
The optics of Malik Willis going to Green Bay, playing well enough where it looked like Jordan Love was panicking and rushed to get back because he was nervous. Those are the optics. And then he's got that press conference where he goes and says, Miss Amy gave me an opportunity. I've got no ill will. I mean, completely taking the higher road with the Titans. And then if it goes that way with Levis and he goes someplace else against another, it just all looks bad. The Brady coaching search now in Oakland. I still don't understand how he can be on, calling games and then also doing this. I don't really care. I honestly, people seem to spend a lot of energy on that. Doesn't really affect me, but how involved is he going to be, just in your estimation? And then how involved should he be in the coaching search in Oakland? In Las Vegas.
So it's interesting, like when Brady got the job, I mean, I loved Romo when Romo at the beginning, that's why I love Greg Olson. Like, they will talk to me like I'm an educated football fan. And then after they do that, they'll bring everybody else up to speed. And I'm not saying I'm like that much smarter, but I just do this for a living. And so I live it, and so the broadcast is as valuable for me as other people. When the greatest player of all time becomes broadcaster, I'm like, wow, I'm going to learn some next level stuff. And that hasn't been the case. this, and whether it's because he's not allowed to talk to people, if he's just like whatever. And some industry experts have said, like, Conor, you need to understand it doesn't matter. It's just that it's Tom Brady saying it, and that's how Fox brings the bodies in. Like, what if he's not going to diagram a cover zero blitz for you, and that's fine, and you're going to have to accept that. So for me, it's like, based on what I'm listening to him say on Sunday, it sounds like he's got plenty of time to help out with the Vegas coaching search. And that's not an offense to him, but I think that's probably what he wants to do more of anyway. And I initially thought, I was like, this is going to be a disaster, because who wants to work for this guy? And he's going to have his opinions, and he's the greatest player of all time, and he's going to be in it. And I think what has been kind of explained to me is that, like, he's the greatest player of all time, but he's also a person who, like, has given everything to win. And, like, doesn't that matter, like, as a coach? And isn't that kind of attractive to you in some way, shape, or form? Because so much of ownership is indifference, and it's politics. And it's like, if you have a guy in there and all he wants to do is win football games at any cost, and he'll be willing to help you do that, like, okay, that's my ride or die guy. And in terms of how involved, I've heard everything across the spectrum. I've seen reporting from other outlets that's a lot stronger on this. That's like, oh, Tom's show. I've heard both ends of the spectrum. I've heard that, yes, he is very much involved. And then I've heard the other end of the spectrum, which is that I don't even know how involved he can be at this point. So, I'll be interested to see how it bears out for sure.
Travis Kelce pushed back hard against this, but we're in an era now where we openly talk about tanking. Warren Sharp was talking about not firing Gerard Mayo because if he got wind of it, he could go out there and pull a Lovie Smith. They kind of do. The Patriots lose the first overall pick. And as a football fan, as a person that still enjoys turning on games, and even though I talk about them, I hate the idea. But I also understand the nature of business, and this is an enormous business, billions of dollars in business. So the notion of the Chiefs putting in Carson Wentz, benching everybody, going out there and just, not necessarily tanking, but making it easy to get blown out by the Broncos, it's not an odious conspiracy theory to me. And the way that talking about UFOs is no longer this thing that you're automatically crazy if you do. Kelce pushed back hard against that on his podcast, but Travis Kelce wouldn't know about it. Like, why would you tell Travis? Is it outlandish to think it's good business for the Chiefs to look at Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and say, F that noise, those guys have beaten us. Let's go ahead and do everything we can to make sure they don't make the tournament. Is it crazy to have that conversation?
No. And I mean, I've always said, I think that the Browns have written the modern playbook on this, which is essentially that, you can't tell a coach or a player to perform poorly, but you can put a poor team on the field and let God decide from there, and the Browns have been very good at this for a long time, and they've been doing it for the tail end of this season where, all of a sudden we want to just like swap Bailey Zappi and Dorian Thompson-Robinson like every couple series. Like, oh, that sounds like a terrible idea, right? And we're just going to say that we want to get a look at everybody, which, like, no, you don't. And, but hey, now we're ending up with the top 5 pick. Great. It's hard, right? Because we've done stories on this, and Joe Thomas gave a great quote to my colleague Jenny Vrentas at Sports Illustrated about just like the psychological damage of that, where it's like, I've given my entire life for this, and now I'm just getting the crap beaten out of me at the end of a Hall of Fame career just so some other guy can get a high pick. Like, there's something really troubling about that. At the same time, like, the players are conditioned to accept the business end of it so much that at some point it's like, well, okay, I mean, this is the world we're living in.
It reminds me of an action movie where there's like some platoon that's pinned down and they call for air support. It's like, negative, we're having radio interference. And it's like, we technically didn't do anything to help you get wiped out, but we didn't give you the air support either. And it feels like that's what the Browns do more oftentimes than not. That is, by the way, the Denver Broncos having success while paying Russell Wilson all that money. I would have thought for sure, Conor, that the Browns would have just looked at that and said, let's just cut this mother effer and eat this money, and we'll figure it out. Our defense is good. We've got good players, and maybe we can bring Kirk Cousins, not Kirk Cousins, somebody in here, though, that can help us win. And they're not going to do that. They're going to keep him. I don't know. Do you deactivate him the whole season and draft a quarterback and bring in a Jimmy Garoppolo type? Like, how do you see that chemistry working?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if he's in the building. I mean, he already, it came out that he had the setback with the Achilles recovery, and that's going to compound the timeline as to when he can come back. I mean, my opinions on this have been all over the place. I mean, obviously the Browns were very defensive of the signing, and they had to take that posture from the beginning, even though it was highly controversial, and I think a lot of people thought just unacceptable from an ethical standpoint. But I was one of the people who were very early on this year when the new allegations came out, looking at the language in the contract and saying, oh, okay, like there is a clause now that they can just get out of this completely, and he might be in violation of that clause. And, if he gets suspended by the NFL, like maybe that's the 3D chess that everyone's playing. But now that doesn't seem to be the case, Deshaun basically signs a new contract every year with Cleveland because they're tweaking the money on the back end of it. So at some point, is there something in there that's like, hey, listen, if you're still hurt, like you're just, here's a lump sum and you're out of here. Like, do they settle? Do they just cut ties at some point? I mean, I would imagine that you just find a way and a time to do it in the off season where it's not as much attention and your coach doesn't have to talk about it every day in front of everybody, and maybe just one sleepy July afternoon, it's like, okay, here we go. Our hands are washed. And now we have, Cam Ward, and we have, like you said, like Jimmy Garoppolo, and life moves on,
It's such a unique problem. And I mean, really, that's how quarterback thirsty everybody is. I know you're up on it here. One last one for you. Other than the Detroit Lions, because I just think their offense, they can nuke anybody if they hit the right day. Who's the biggest threat to the Chiefs? You're getting Hollywood Brown back. They've got, they brought in Hopkins. Like they've got better. Kelsey's going to play better in the postseason. That. And they lost 2 games, and Patrick Mahomes didn't really play all that well this year. I mean, it's the craziest thing you can think of. Who is the one team you look at and say, because they've got record on all I would say the Ravens, but they went in and did the Ravens, and the Ravens completely forgot everything about themselves in their own building last year. If it was Joe Burrow, I'd pick him. He's not in the tournament. Who's the one team, both conferences, not named Detroit, that you say they could end the Chiefs?
Oh, it's a good question because this is as top heavy of a league as I remember it being. And like I would do the power rankings every week, and then you get to like 3, and then you're like, wow, every team after this kind of sucks a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then especially when you get to 20, you're just like, good Lord. And so to me, it's like Detroit, and I've said this before, I've been covering the NFL for 14 years. When they're totally healthy, that is the best team I've ever seen. Period. And so if it's not them, other teams on the right day could probably do it, but I'm not, if the Eagles get a good game out of Jalen Carter, they could beat anybody in the playoffs, right? But Jalen Carter, maybe some days he's going to play well, some days he's not going to play well. The Ravens, like you said, I mean, the Packers, now that I used to love them as a potential berserker candidate, but now that they lost Christian Watson, I feel like they don't have the diversity at the wide receiver court they used to. If Josh Jacobs doesn't run for 200 yards, you're kind of hosed. I mean, maybe Minnesota, just because that defense is so good that they would have the capability of just, doing enough on offense, but I don't really see it. I mean, to me, there isn't really a team, It's just like these 2 other guys are just head and shoulders above everybody else.
I think it's got to come from the AFC. I think a team that don't know no better, and I say Denver, and I know Los Angeles, because they're well coached.
Yeah,
and they got some players that I don't think the moment wouldn't be too big for them. I don't think Denver's scared of Kansas City at all. It would be a shocker. I think if they get to the Super Bowl, it's a wrap. I think they'll figure it out. No disrespect to Brian Flores, or there's some great coordinators and coaches and everybody that would dial it up for them. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it's got to come before they get there.
But Detroit and Kansas City is, I mean, I've heard everybody say Detroit and Buffalo is probably the Super Bowl that America wants.
Oh, I'd kill. That'd be amazing.
But the Super Bowl that America will get is maybe Detroit and Kansas City, but I'll take that. I would die to, not die. I would be very excited when, and I'll be there. So I hope that's what I hope I get.
SI.com, and of course, Conor Orr on X, senior writer there. Great to catch up with you, buddy. Fantastic content as always. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chep.
Have a great weekend. There he goes. The great Conor Orr always came on the show, regardless of what the show was, Big O and Dukes or Chad Dukes versus the world, kicked an acre of ass. Thank you to him. And again, thank you to Dream State Getaways for making all of our guests possible today. I did want to play this, and then maybe we can get some reaction. There's 51 of you watching live. That's sad. Hit the like button. This is the Kelsey brothers on their annoying podcast, but I really did like this answer from Travis Kelce about whether or not the Kansas City Chiefs would have been capable of laying down to the Denver Broncos to keep Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase out of the playoffs.
There's some people alleging that it was a purposeful letting get your ass.
I ain't scared of fucking nobody.
I'm not alleging this.
I wanted them in the fucking
I'm
playoffs.
not alleging this.
I want to slay every dragon one by one, like Mortal Kombat. I don't even want this to be like we play the lowest seed. Just give me the best teams.
I'm not, Travis. I'm just telling you what
AFC,
people are
NFC.
saying.
Give
I'm
me
not
all of
saying
them.
this.
Mortal
People-
Kombat style. I'll go
people
through
are
every
saying-
fucking one of them.
Do you remember when people got offended that Joe Buck got offended that Randy Moss pretended to moon the crowd in Green Bay? Do you remember when everybody was offended that Marshawn Lynch grabbed his Charles Dickens as he, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be offended by this shit. There's some of me that's a traditionalist that says these are professional athletes. They should conduct themselves as such. But listen to the way fucking Kelsey, who is a spokesperson for Pfizer, for Campbell's Soup, for children's breakfast cereal. It's just funny to me how how far the paradigm has shifted is what is acceptable from these guys that have all these crazy ass endorsements. But I do love his answer so far.
Just giving them my best fucking effort.
People
I ain't scared
were
of a
saying
single soul, man.
You didn't want to see the Bengals in Burrowhead or in Cincinnati.
I'll play them at the Walmart parking lot. I don't give a shit. We can have our own game in the offseason where we really duke it out again. I love competing against the greatest. The Bengals were a fun ass fucking team to watch there towards the end of the season.
I love the fact that Jason calls it Burrowhead Stadium. Look, my point when I was talking to Conor was that is the correct answer, specifically from a team leader and a superstar. That's what you want your guys to say. That ain't how tanking works. That's not how that job gets done. That's not how the 3-second tan goes down. How many people knew that Hogan was the third man before he came out and dropped the leg on Randy Savage? How many people? How many writers? How many bookers? You keep that shit close to the chest. That's good business. And the best business for the Kansas City Chiefs was to keep the Bengals out of the postseason. That ain't a conspiracy theory. That ain't tinfoil hat wearing shit. It is what it is, as Derek Lewis, the Black Beast, would say. That's why anybody that brings it up, that's how it got to that point. That's how it got to that podcast, how it got to Travis Kelce's ears, is that enough people realize that. Teams are tanking. I don't like it. You shouldn't like it if you buy tickets. You shouldn't like it if you pay for the Sunday ticket. Why do you think they booed in New York? Why do you think they booed in New England when they're winning games? There's too many smart marks out there. And this is even easier. This isn't we're losing because we want a better player in the future. We're asking veterans getting paid a salary right now to sit on the bench while we walk some jobbers out there so they can have that ass whipped. That's a bigger ask than this. This is we're going into the postseason. We got to buy. We got home field advantage. There's one team we're scared of. And guess what? We decide whether or not their card gets punched. That's smart. That's chess. That's not checkers. You know, going out there and saying we're going to fire this head coach and then letting this head coach in week 17 where he puts a better option at quarterback out there, one that creates mismatches, run all over the field, look like Anthony Richardson's supposed to look. Jersey gets sent over to the fucking Hall of Fame. That's bad business. I think the sportsmanship is better, but it's bad business. So that's why it doesn't matter what Travis Kelce says. It doesn't matter what Patrick Mahomes. Maybe let Mahomes in on it. In his Bart of Barts, Patrick Mahomes probably breathed a sigh of relief. I know he's a competitor. I know that he wants to go out there and compete just like Kelce does, but he wants championships. And I know that he's got a better chance against Bo Nix and Justin Herbert, even Lamar Jackson, even the top tier. Last thing I wanted to bring up today, and thank you so much for watching live. If you are watching live, if you are not, I encourage you to go to iTunes and Spotify. The link there is at the bottom of the page. Subscribe to Both Types of Sports. It's free. It is FREE. We're getting a little kickback now for people that listen to the podcast. So if you care about supporting the show, you can do it that way. And it is free. If you leave a 5-star review, that's even better. But if not, still subscribe to Both Types of Sports on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. And thank you to our buddy Josh Soroka for getting us set up with that. And thank you to Gigantor for helping us get this up on the interwebs, even though he had today. I saw somebody in the chat bitching about that. Tor's got a Joe job. Tor's got a regular person job that he works during the day. So that's why if I want to do the show at this point, he is unavailable. So don't give him no shit for that. There's plenty of other stuff you can give him shit for, including them big ass canned hams he carries around in the back of them sweatpants.
And you could head to the NFL.
I know where you're going.
This is Deion Sanders on ABC being asked if there was a chance he could coach in the NFL.
Is there a chance that you could head to the NFL?
I know where you're going. You try to go viral, right? Yeah. If I respond, you know we're going viral, right?
I know, right?
You know what? The only way I would consider is to coach my son. Not son. No. Sons. Okay.
I think we're going to go viral with that.
Yeah.
So that's not a no.
Well, I love Colorado. Now, I love my Buffaloes. I love everything that we're building. I love everything that we're doing. And I love Boulder, Colorado. I do.
I believe him. And I believe that he's going to stay there for a while. But one of there's a couple of different ways to respond to this. One is Deion Sanders isn't my favorite athlete / coach of all time. We actually have a little bit of a history, if you can believe it. Back when I hosted LeVar and Duke, I was critical of his grammar on Twitter at the time, and he called into the show, and it was very awkward. But the act that I don't like is everybody's out to get us all the time. Everybody's got knives out for us, and I just don't know if that's the case. I think a lot of the way that you conduct yourself brings that on yourself, and I think he comes by it honestly, the ostentatiousness, the braggadociousness. So it's nothing I necessarily hold against him. It's not my brand. What I do admire about him is, first of all, the success. The coaching situation. Coaching is very hard, regardless of whether or not you want to believe it is or whether he not says it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, a lot of connections, a lot of everything. So to find success, of course, and he's one of the greatest football players of all time, and I'm a lifelong football fan, so I have that baseline level of respect. Not that anybody asked or cares. The other part about him that I respect is I believe him. I believe family's important to him, and his sons playing with him are important to him. And as a father, and as a family man, that is definitely something that is enviable. It's enviable. You can call it whatever you want to. You can call it nepotism. You can call it a bunch of different things. Is it the same thing when LeBron James does it in the National Basketball Association? His son ends up with him. I don't know. I think that it's different there, specifically when the contributions are not going to be what it is. Now he's got one son, where it would be very possible for them to be reunited. Right? People have already speculated about that with the Titans if they took Shedeur Sanders, although I think Deion tweeted about when they fired their general manager that it looked like he was not in favor of that. The point being is, while it is definitely admirable as a father for him to want to do that and that it's important to him, and if you watch that clip that went viral from Jerry Jones talking about working with his kids on that Landman show, you can see how important it is to him. And I think people that are very successful, they start looking at what should be my priority right now, because I've accomplished a lot of my goals already, right? Like these are men that have accomplished goals that most of us never will. And so they look a step further. And maybe it's, I want to get involved in politics. I'm a Musk, I'm a Soros. I want to be able to influence. I want to be able to have power, or, when it comes to what Deion is talking about here, what Jerry Jones is talking about, I want to work with my family. I want my family around me when I'm doing what I do. That's important to me. That's admirable. That's a good quality. But that's already putting your personal shit in front of the franchise. Like the franchise that wants to employ Deion Sanders, the NFL franchise, is going to have to take a knee on a bunch of shit, right? They're going to have to brook a lot of what Deion wants, and it's like, hey, you better sign my other kid to the practice squad or wherever he would slot in at CB. Yeah, you better be up for that. And then what does that say? What does that unspoken message say to the locker room, to the rest of the league, to the rest of the owners? I don't know. That's a very complex organism there. But on the surface, you admire that, but also it would make me very hesitant if I was the coach. It's another reason why I don't want, as a Titans fan, as great as Shedeur Sanders is, I don't want them taking him. I don't want to get into the Sanders business. I don't want everything that comes along with that. There's good stuff that comes along with it, but there's a lot of this. It's a lot of intertwined, a lot of, I don't know. It ain't RG3 taking reps with his father at training camp. There have been a lot of helicopter parents involved in the NFL. I can't ever get away from it. Deion Sanders is different than Kurt Warner's wife or Doug Christie's wife or whatever example you want to give. But whenever there's a Jackson Mahomes or a Brittany Mahomes, it never helps. Whenever there's stuff going on around, it's just very difficult for that to ever be good. And perhaps that's disrespectful because Deion Sanders has earned more than that for the caliber of player he is and now what he's done coaching. But Jesus Christ, do I got to run this past your dad? Do I got to run this past? Do we have to sign somebody else you're related to? Do we have to sign? It feels like there's going to be a lot of strings that come attached to doing business with that group. And I don't think it's going to scare away a lot of franchises. But I wouldn't want to deal with it personally. I would look in a different direction, which is interesting because that's what Conor Orr said about what. It's definitely going to be a tangled web to unweave for the Tennessee Titans to figure out what to do at quarterback, specifically since what they've done at quarterback for the past fill in the blank how many years. God bless Ryan Tannehill and the couple of good years he had with that organization. You had in your prime Derrick Henry. You had A.J. Brown. You had Mike Vrabel. I don't know. Oh, there are some garbage teams out there. Really regrettable situations where you look to the ownership group, which is why what is happening in Detroit right now is so goddamn amazing. It's so fantastic. That's a doormat franchise. Wipe your feet before you come inside. I'm from the Bronx. That's a team that sucked for as long as we've drawn breath. No disrespect to Herman Moore, Barry Sanders, all the greats, Scott Mitchell, Charlie Batch. Come on. Let's get in there. Josh Reynolds, all the all-time Lions greats. But it is refreshing. That's why I pull for the fucking Bears to turn it around. You don't think the NFL would be better if the Bears played better in that market with those names in the fucking history books? The Sayerses, the Didkas, the Paytons, the McMahons, the Refrigerator Perrys, the Richard Dents. Fuck out of here. Football would be better if the Bears were better. And football is better because the Lions are better. I could give two shits if the 49ers make another run. I could give two shits if the Patriots make another run. And I could give to anybody but KC. Take a look at my bio. I'm over it. Time for some new blood. Please, Denver Broncos. Please, Los Angeles Chargers. Please, one of these teams that don't know no better and don't feel no fear. Go in there and punch them in the mouth. They have played mediocre football from tape to tape for their standards, and it hasn't bitten them in the ass. They took an entire first half of a season off last year. Well, not first half, but middle of the way point to the season. Turned it on the postseason, and there was no comeuppance. There was no ramifications. Let this year be the year. You don't get to put it in neutral and coast down the hill. I don't care if you have Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and Isaiah Pacheco. As a Packer fan, I want the Bears to suck. Fuck your Packers. I'm so fucking sick of how overrated your Packers are, Stephen Rowe. Fucking tired of it. Every analyst in the NFL has been sucking off the Packers for the past 6 weeks. And what do? What have they done? Too young, they're too fast, they're too well coached. Okay, you had an opportunity to win that division. You're nothing but a fucking frozen pea in the afterbirth. Try to start your quarterback this week. Try to get your quarterback out on the field this week. I heard he got knocked out. I heard his backup got knocked out. Oof. Sick of the fucking Packers. Sick of them 3 quarterbacks in a row. Every single time it ends dirty, horrible, and disgusting. Maybe Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers are both monsters, or maybe look in the fucking mirror. Suck it. Suck it from the pack. All right, very good. Go subscribe on iTunes, and of course, if you want to donate to the thing in the bank and the...
Hey, what do you got?
Both types of sports.
Yeah, what's it do? Go long. Real long.